It was good, y'all. It's your boy JD6 here with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man. And welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. I'm your host, Keegan Russell. With me today, Christopher Tenpenny, to talk some more Royals off season with you guys. But first, before we do that, just a reminder, you can find the podcast over on Spotify and on YouTube. If you're watching here on YouTube, please do us a quick favor. We are on the way to 250 subscribers, and we're getting there pretty close to it already. So do us a quick favor, hit that subscribe button right there on the screen. That would greatly help us out, and we would be greatly appreciative of that. If you're listening over on Spotify, you can also take a second to give the podcast a 5-star rating and leave us some comments. And of course, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do that as well. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. All right, Chris, let's talk some Royals. You know, a few weeks ago, we talked with Cody Tapp of 610 Sports Radio just to kind of get some ideas of some free agent targets, some of the offseason moves we might see, some potential discussions of players that are interesting to him for this team. Since then, there really hasn't been a whole lot of moves yet outside of two kind of semi-minor trades that we're going to talk about. But before we talk Royals, just in general with this offseason so far, no news on the Ohtani front yet, other than that there's a bunch of teams out there. You know, there's a little bit of talk that we might see a Juan Soto trade here soon. It's been relatively quiet. Do you have any takeaways so far from the offseason?
I feel like this is how it always goes with the MLB offseason. Everyone gets used to the NBA offseason and the NFL offseason, where as soon as it's allowed to make moves, boom, you see like 10 big moves right off the bat first day. And that's not how it works in baseball. There's so much time. They have the winter meetings. I don't think something that really the NFL or NBA has. And like, it just kind of takes, you're waiting for that first big fish to drop. Not necessarily that the Royals need to be waiting for that fish, because they're not in play for any of them, hitting or pitching. But I think really everyone's really trying to kind of see what Ohtani decides to do. And once that deal kind of is set, teams will know that they don't have to save money for that anymore, and you'll start to see the moves come in. So that's kind of where we're at too. The Juan Soto trade also is going to be something to keep an eye on too for those teams looking for a bat. So those are the two big names that I kind of think needs to happen before we get the Blake Snells, before we get those kind of moves happening.
Yeah, really outside of that, you've had Aaron Nola signed his big deal to stay with the Phillies. The Mets just signed Luis Severino. The Cardinals brought back Lance Lynn, signed Kyle Gibson. I think Sonny Gray's off the market now, back with the Reds.
No, he's with the Cardinals.
Cardinals. Sorry.
Yeah,
Cardinals. Yep. They went off and got 3 guys. And then Kenta Maeda just signed, I think it was today or yesterday by the time you guys watch this, just signed back here in the AL Central Division. But the Royals have made 2 moves so far. They've made a couple smaller moves here and there. And I know one I actually didn't include in our notes here, but we can briefly touch on it. Purpose of this episode, though, is to talk specifically about Royals pitching in the offseason, more so starting pitchers. But 2 quick moves here the Royals did make. The first one was acquiring starting pitcher Kyle Wright from the Atlanta Braves by sending out one of our failed prospects in Jackson Kohar. No offense to him, but just didn't live up to the hype. Thoughts on this quick move here? You know, Kyle Wright's been with the Braves for a couple seasons now. He's had some really bright spots. He's had some spots, but not all around, not a bad pitcher at all. What do you think about this move?
I absolutely love the move. These are kind of moves that the Royals need to make. Now, I know Kyle Wright, he's going to be 29 by the time he pitches again, which will be 2025. He's going to miss the entire 2024 season. So there is a little bit of that. You're not going to get that instant gratification from this move, but like, you traded Jackson Kowar for a kid who finished top 10 in Cy Young in 2022 and has made a World Series start where he pitched. He didn't pitch in the CS, he didn't pitch in the DS, and they had to throw him in the wild card against the Astros, and he threw 6 innings of 1-run ball. And then, oh, by the way, he pitched the next year and pitched 6 innings of shutout ball. So, like, you don't get those kind of players for Jackson Kowar. unless there is a little bit of a risk, but those are the kind of risks you want to take. Take your failed prospects and flip it for something. Even if Wright comes back and he's not the same guy, I can't imagine him being worse than what Jackson Kowar has been given the Royals.
Yeah, to me, it's one of those classic. Jackson Kowar needed a new look, a new location to go try it out. Didn't work here. Maybe I think the only thought I had was, well, could you have gotten Kyle Wright another way since he's not going to pitch this year anyway? So is it worth keeping Kowar around for one more year just to see what happens now that we've got another full year with the new pitching staff and maybe he develops in the offseason? But in reality, Kowar, the last year and a half we've seen him, that the ceiling we thought he had, he's just gotten nowhere close to that as reliable. So maybe just new location, good for him. I don't mind the Kyle Wright move. I think it's kind of what, to me, Kyle Wright is similar to what we have with Brady Singer, a guy that's got good upside, good potential when he's on and consistent, but when he's not consistent, he struggles. So maybe he's a guy you bring in because you think he's a more solidified version of what Brady Singer could be. So if Singer was moved, you've got a guy that's similar. But if Singer's still around after the 2024 season here and Kyle Wright's healthy, that gives you two guys that should be competing for that 3-4 spot that are going to give you good innings with some good upside. So I don't mind that one at all. It didn't really cost you a whole lot. Maybe you could have got him another way and kept Kowar, but again, Kowar probably ran out of chances here to really stick. And then the next one, which I know you like this move quite a bit,
Yeah.
is the Royals acquired right-hander Nick Anderson, also from the Braves, because of course it wouldn't be a Royals offseason or regular season without multiple trades with the Braves. I think that has happened every year since Dayton Moore was here and has continued to happen even without him here. Tell us about Nick Anderson.
He's another guy that, kind of like Kyle Wright, like he's got postseason experience. He's coming off some injury years. Now he will be able to pitch in 2024 as he came back this year from, I believe, Tommy John. But man, he was maybe the best relief pitcher in baseball in 2020. I know it was a shortened season, but like he's a 2-pitch pitcher. He's got a disgusting curveball, kind of like Josh Staumont without maybe quite the velocity, but that same kind of style to where it's just fastball curveball. And I think he's going to be a good 7th inning, 8th inning guy where worst case scenario, I don't know if you get Cole Reagans like you did for Chapman, but he's a guy that if he comes in and pitches well, he hits all the spots that a contending team's going to want. And like worst case scenario is you trade him for another prospect. Where best case scenario, pitches really well on a team that surprises people or is 2 years away. Whatever you think with the Royals, but you only gave up cash for him, so you essentially signed him like he's a free agent, and he's just the perfect kind of pitcher that the Royals need to be bringing in.
Yep, low risk, high reward. He's only going to make about $1.5 million next year. The Braves look like they're trying to move guys out to bring some bigger potential names in. So they need to clear some space and a little bit of cap. Well, not cap room because there's no cap, but a little bit of cash flow to maybe go get a few guys. And then he was also arbitration eligible. So that's one less headache there you might have to deal with. Yeah, low risk, high reward. If he doesn't pan out, you're not out anything. But as you'll see with some of these options we're going to talk about with starting pitchers, he's a guy that, might be looking for a little bit of a bounce back situation just to prove that he's still capable of performing like he did a couple years ago. He's probably going to fit in just nicely with the bullpen, a little bit more of a veteran presence in there to maybe push some of the younger guys. So again, low risk, high reward move. And then probably one that pans out like we've seen a lot. And then the other one I didn't include in here, and I'm going to let you take this one because you also are a little bit more familiar with him than myself. But the Royals also picked up a utility infielder outfielder guy.
Yeah, they got Garrett Hampson from I guess the Miami's where he was last year, but most of you, if you're familiar with him, will know him as one of the top prospects in the Colorado Rockies system. He came up as a middle infielder, mostly second base, kind of struggled to stay healthy and B, hit consistently, but had a really nice year in limited time in Miami last year. I mean, he was right around the 100 OPS plus, which which is pretty good if you're going to be a utility guy. He can play second, he can play center. He's got some speed. He's not going to hit for a lot of power, but kind of the perfect guy to put at the end of your bench. Better, I think, if you're going for minimum, much more of an upgrade over the Duffys and the Matt Duffys and the Beatties and people they had last year, and kind of opens the door to where, like, are they going to move on from Lofton? Are they going to move on from Waters? Like, he's not like an incredible person to get super excited for, but it is someone that like opens some doors roster wise for the Royals to make some moves.
Yeah, I think that's what when you and I were talking about it off air, to me the question was, okay, what's coming next? Like if you bring a guy in with this versatility, usually there's either a guy that has that versatility that's on the way out or a person in another position that you're considering moving on from where he could come in and get some playing time there. Again, probably another one of those low risk, potential high reward, new situation, new opportunities. Maybe he can show something. But let's get into the meat of this episode. Let's talk about Royals free agent starting pitcher options. Obviously, everyone knows one of the biggest needs of this team is starting pitching. Starting pitching was, for the most part, a disaster last year. A few bright spots here and there. Obviously, Cole Reagans was fantastic down the stretch, but you cannot roll into the year with just Cole Reagans. You got to have a full rotation of 5 guys. And as much as we know Jordan Lyles is pitching, we can't rely on him to do all that. So let's talk about starting pitchers. And as we get into this, we have 4 tiers we're going to go through. A lot of ways we could break this down. Obviously there's the guys at the top of the list that aren't realistic. The Blake Snells of the world. Obviously Ohtani, who's not going to pitch this year, of course. Maybe even a Marcus Stroman might be too far out of there. So instead of going with like realistic hopes, our tiers are going to be more situational. So first one here, which is going to sound similar to tier 2, but there's a little difference here. Tier 1 is going to be reclamation projects. So guys that didn't just struggle, but maybe need a completely new situation, a new team to dive into, a new situation, new opportunity, guys that just seemed broken where they were. Now, tier 2, as we'll get into here in a few minutes, is bounce back guys, which a lot of these guys you could probably put in both tiers. The bounce back guys that we'll get into later is going to be more so guys that just have the talent and just struggled last year and just need to bounce back. So reclamation projects, as we've got the list pulled up here, are there any guys that just stand out to you off the top of your head in this potential group that the Royals could consider going after?
I think for me, a guy I haven't heard talked about a lot that I really like is Spencer Turnbull from Detroit. Some of you may remember him from Detroit. He had a really nice 2 years there in 2020 and 2021. Had Tommy John and missed all of 2022 and came back through 31 innings to the way of a 7.26 ERA this year. Like just did not have it coming back from injury. And he's never been a guy with like electric stuff. And he's going to be 31 years old. So this is someone I think the Royals could get cheap. I think that's not on a lot of people's radars. And if he sucks, it's someone that's easy to let go, that just, he wasn't able to come back from his injury. But if he's able to turn back into his 2021 form, you've got a strong lefty who can eat up innings. You can move. You can do a lot of different things. Because I'm not looking at, anybody in this category is not in the range of this trying to elevate the team in 2024, 25. This is the kind of guy that can eat innings and maybe get you a prospect or something in return to be able to get good in 2025, 2026. So that's kind of where I see Spencer as.
Yeah, and to me, I like that one a lot too. This tier, I kind of think similar to the Jordan Lyles signing last year. It's a guy that you're not going to have super high expectations of, other than, hey, we need you to come out every 5th day and provide us 5-6 innings and give us a chance. Even, someone that can have a sub 5 ERA. I know that's still a lot to ask for sometimes in this day and age, but a sub 5 ERA that's going to get you 5 to 6, 7 innings every 5th day and go out there and do that. So I like Turnbull. I think, again, he's one that maybe new team, new situation, just a different opportunity. He's had talent. He's got capability and ability. I think we've seen flashes of that over the years with Detroit. Just never really panned out for whatever reason. So again, I like that one there. I had a hard time coming up with guys for this tier versus tier 2 because I think there is a lot of overlap. But to me, that I kept going back to who are those guys that are 29 to 33 that have shown flashes of success early on, may have struggled late, and just need to get in the right system. So one I'm going to throw out there, and I don't even know if he's quite a reclamation project because he's a little bit older now, but a guy like a Corey Kluber, a James Paxton, who also you could say could just be a bounce back candidate. a Jake Odorizzi, Texas didn't really pan out
Odorizzi's good.
great, for him. Again, I'm going to save him for another tier later too to dive further into. Maybe a guy like a Zach Davies, who again he's had brilliant starts for several years in Arizona. Was okay this season. Probably left a lot on the table to be desired. So I think he's another guy that could have some interest there that might not be too expensive. And then the one I like, and I don't know if he's Reclamation Project or if he's more bounce back guy. But the name that I've been looking at for several months now is Frankie Montas.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I should save him for one of our other tiers, but that's just another name I like. Outside of those guys that are kind of going to fall in this tier, are there any other ones that just feel super realistic or just feel like, hey, this is a classic Royals signing?
You asked that, and then I'm going to go to a guy that I don't know how realistic he is, but Carlos Carrasco, I think, fits perfectly into this because he's going to be 37 years old this year, and he has in 3 years with the Mets, his ERA is over 5. So he's coming off a few minor injuries. I don't know if, again, it's kind of one of those things to where he's a name. He's someone a lot of people know because he was such a huge part of those good Cleveland teams. But if he has no market because people don't think he has it anymore, and you think you can get something out of him, I mean, it would have to be for the right price. I don't want to overpay him for what he's done, not for what he's going to do in a Royals uniform. But he's someone I would like at least monitor and see what the market is.
Yep, I think I agree with that. Okay, let's go to tier 2, and that's bounce back guys. And I think this might be the largest tier of options because there's a lot of guys in the free agency list that are specifically for this, as well as our tier 3, which we'll get into, of course, which is guys with upside still. But tier 2 bounce back guys, for me, one of the guys at the top of this tier got moved around a couple times last year. He's a guy that has, I wouldn't say dominated the Royals, but has given us a ton of frustration over the years. So maybe getting him on our side of the diamond for once would be good. And that's Lucas Giolito. Got moved around a couple times last year, Giants, and then to Cleveland later in the year, and then I think he got waived again at the end of the season. He to me seems like a classic bounce back guy. Just either for whatever case, wrong situation, timing. Maybe he had an injury that was slowing him down. He's the guy that's shown plenty of flash of potential. So he's one I like in the bounce back candidate. But the one I was going to ask you on, because we've talked about this off air, and I don't think he's getting enough attention. I know there's still some of the legal stuff trying to work through and figure out, when he's going to be cleared completely. That's Trevor Bauer. Hasn't been super great playing overseas, but again, he also didn't pitch for a while and hasn't really had an opportunity. I think I would still take a flyer on. What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, 1,000,000%. If you can get Trevor Bauer, you get Trevor Bauer as your Royal. Like, it's kind of like the Aroldis Chapman. Again, I'm going to keep going back to that because currently that looked like a great move. I know I wasn't a huge fan of it at the time with the Royals, mostly because of the, just the stories and the accusations against Chapman. But the move worked, and you can't deny that so far. So taking those kind of guys that maybe a big market team's a little scared of because of the storylines, because of the publicity, it's going to get hidden away a little bit in poor old Kansas City. And you look up and it's July, and Trevor Bowers through 13, 14 starts has a 3.5 ERA and is strutting around the diamond again like he used to. And you flip him for someone or he's not going to be signing long tier deals regardless of where he goes. This is another one of those moves to where you do it to try to get something in return, not to build the team for 2025, 2026. But if no one else is ballsy enough to take him, Kansas City absolutely should, because for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much been like all of the legal stuff has been dropped and almost kind of proved as fake from what got him kicked out of the MLB. So it's not like you're hiring a terrible person like we all kind of couldn't really say there for a couple of years with Bauer.
And I might be wrong because I didn't check this before. I don't know if he's off the exemption list or if he's been reinstated to the league just yet. because that legal stuff. But yeah, if he's available, I would love that. I love his tenacity. I love his energy, his charisma. I mean, I think every Royals fan can remember his his cannon throw over center field when he was pissed off a couple of years back against us. So I wouldn't mind having that on our side. We don't really have. I can't really think of the last 4 or 5 years a pitcher outside of maybe Brady Singer that's really showed that energy and emotion on the diamond, whether it's good or bad. Just in general, I don't think we see a lot of that. And I think he's a guy that could do that. I have no idea what his market is. I've seen
Yeah.
people say he could command 13 to 14 million a year. I've seen, well, maybe 3 to 4 million is realistic. So who knows? There hasn't been a lot of talk, but if he's available, I would at least pick up the phone, bring him in for a workout, see if he's interested. Because for me, he's the perfect example of that either reclamation project / bounce back guy that just needs to get back in here. Any other guys in this tier that really stand out to you?
Last thing on Bauer real quick too is like
Mhm.
this team gave Greinke 8.5 million. So like why wouldn't you give Trevor Bauer like 10 million? Like if that's his market for a
Yeah,
year.
couple years younger, several years
Like
younger.
someone you're probably gonna trade, maybe not have to pay, not have the whole contract for if he's good. Other like it's only for a year. I don't know. It would bring a little bit of attention to Kansas City, which does, there's no such thing as bad publicity, so which could bring a few more seats and butts and seats, excuse me, saying that the right way for on days he would potentially start if they do use him as a starter. So I think if his market is that low, why not give him 10 to 10 million and just see what happens, even if he doesn't have it and is a complete bust and you cut him by
Yeah,
June. I don't know. I think it's worth it. But last guy that I'd probably be interested that is Martin Perez. He was an all-star in 2022. And then surprisingly, the Rangers didn't use him, or they used him out of the bullpen because he just wasn't living up to what he was doing in 2022 starting, and I know they liked what they were getting from John Gray and from Evaldi and Heaney and those guys, but it was surprising that he wasn't really a star down the stretch. His ERA was pretty inflated. I think he's someone that you could see bounce back because at the very least he's been kind of an innings eater too, getting to
yeah,
160, 180 innings a year. Lefty that knows how to pitch. Again, his stuff isn't overpowering, but knows how to pitch into someone that's good. Like Cole Reagans is familiar with out of that Rangers organization. Jordan Lyles and him pitched on the same rotation at one point in Texas. So there's some familiarity there. He's a guy that I would really like to see the Royals kind of take a stab at.
yeah. He'd also bring a strong veteran presence. I mean, he's been in the league. It feels like a long time because he's been very solid pretty much every year he's been in the league. I was also a little surprised on how they use him down the stretch, but he's also a guy to me, if I think back to some of his days earlier, he always seemed like a guy that's been tough when he faces the Royals. He just, comes out there, grinds through 6-7 innings of 3-run ball, 4 or 5 hits, and keeps you in it. So I wouldn't mind that at all. Again, maybe not quite a true bounce back guy because he had a good season, but bounce back into maybe a better situation for the season. My guy, the other guy I had on this list, and definitely a big candidate for it because he dropped off the face of the earth last year from his start 2 years ago. And that's Domingo Germán from the Yankees. There's a lot of guys I actually put on this list that are Yankee pitchers that just, they went out and got all this pitching the last 2 years, and then just a bunch of them just didn't show up. And Germán's one of them. He's getting a little bit older, but I've always just kind of liked watching him play. He's got, again, another pitcher that's got a little bit of energy when he's out there pitching. Just didn't have it this year. I don't know what his market is. There hasn't been a lot of talk on him, but that's one I've looked at. Okay, let's go to tier 3. This is upside guys. And again, this could kind of range from older pitchers that still have the ability, just can't deliver the long-term consistency, or maybe some younger pitchers that just need some of their skill sets honed in. One I've liked for several years, and he's kind of a borderline starter into reliever, depending on where he's at. And that's Jose Urena. Don't know how familiar you are with him, but he's bounced around the league a little bit. I think he's about 31, 32 now. But he's still got some good upside there. He's one that I don't think would cost much of anything. Pitched for the White Sox last year. Another one, a little bit older guy that had some good stretches this year, and I don't think he's going to command a huge value. And that's Julio Teheran who's also, steady, proven veteran that's bounced around the league here and there. I like him as a little bit of upside, and I'm sure this list is really long. But any guys you have that you're honing in on here with that upside?
See, it's funny because I would have put both those guys, Tyron and Urena, in maybe the previous tier, just because they are a little older. They have bounced around. Arena's, I always think of how he would plunk Acuna every time they played the Braves when he was in Miami. That was kind of what he was known for. But like my upside guys, I like Flaherty. Now I know he's coming off maybe a little bit more of a down year, but bounced around, clearly has good stuff. He's still 28 years old. I think that alone is good enough to put him in the upside category to where
Yeah, he's one that's shown flashes of that number one starter ability, not always consistently, but he's still got that talent.
Right, kind of where I would put Giolito too. I think just because Giolito's 29, and I kind of give those guys a little bit more of a leash when putting them in the upside because they have shown flashes. Were top prospects. They have had good seasons, and they're still under 30. So those are the two guys. I know we talked about Giolito a little bit already that I would really look at if I'm in the Royals front office right now. And hey, I know we're trying to be realistic, but they're best friends. I don't know how realistic that is, but bring them both in. Now, I think their markets, because of their age, is going to be a little too expensive for the Royals' pockets. But hey, wouldn't that be perfect to bring in?
Yeah,
two
go
friends?
after them. Yeah, 2-for-1 special there.
Right, and then you bring them both in, and you got Reagan, Singer, and those two, and Lyles can be your fifth. Like, what else you need to do?
Yeah, I'm trying to look through this list and see if there's any other guys under 27 that kind of fit this criteria that we haven't
Most
mentioned.
guys don't hit free agency, just
Yeah,
because
that's
of
the
how
problem.
long they have
Jaime
control.
Barria, maybe.
Yeah,
I just saw another one that stood out to me.
it's just a lot of those guys at that age that hit free agency are going to be your Blake Snells, are going to be, when we saw Nola get signed, that's just kind of how the MLB works with having those 6 years of control.
Yeah.
That you're not, if you're a team like the Royals and you just cannot compete for the top end talent, you're going to have to look at those other guys under 30 who've showed flashes coming off a down-ish year, like Flaherty. Giolito actually had a really good first 3 months and then sucked the last 3 months. So he's almost bouncing back from just half a season. But like, those are kind of the guys that if you try to make a splash as the Royals are trying to potentially do, those are kind of the names that you have to go after.
Yeah, and then the other two, he's still on the younger side. That's Logan Allen. And I know there's a bunch of Logan Allens in the league. So this is Logan Allen, lefty from Seattle. I think he was kind of their 4 or 5 guy this last year. Had bright spots. Currently a free agent. I don't think we really need another strong lefty in this now that we have Reagan's doing what he's doing, but he's got some upside still there. And then the other one I was just looking at, Joe Ross, another guy that's kind of bounced around from starter to reliever. I've liked him with the Nationals, played with San Francisco this year. He's shown a lot of flash of strong potential. Just like some of these guys, just hasn't had the consistent multi-year seasons to put together and hasn't really done it in a couple of years. But what do you think about him?
Well, he didn't pitch in the majors at all last year, I'm pretty sure.
I think this last year
I don't know if he was injured or if he was in the minors, but like he's a guy that kind of fits with the Royals a bit. Now he's a little older than some of those, but like, Garrett Hampson was a top prospect in 2019 and Kyle Wright was a top prospect in 2019. And like Joe Ross was like a top prospect in 2015, so he's a little bit older, but he's also was a little bit younger when he debuted, if I remember correctly. So he's someone that, again, he kind of fits in I think he would fall in the Reclamation project. He had some injuries in Washington, didn't pitch in the majors this year, like still 30 years old, 29 years old, whatever it is. And if you get something from him, great. If not, I think they need to bring in as much of those veteran major league experience guys as they can afford, because this whole last year using all these, trying out Max Castillo, trying out these guys that just, Angel Zerpa, like I know that a lot of Royals fans like him. I just don't think he has it long term in this league. Yeah. Like, what's the harm in bringing in veterans that people know that can do it to where, like, if they do pop off for a second, it's easier to flip more, unlike, some prospects, if they don't get scouted well, you're not going to trade anything for them because you've never seen it long term. Like, sure, you can say Angel Zerpa's, 23 years old and had one really good start against Toronto that one time. Like, teams aren't trading for that. But
Yeah.
you brought in Spencer Turnbull, who was really bad last year, but we've seen 2 years of him being really good. Like, okay, well, here's our eighth prospect, So I don't know. That's how I would manage the team if I was the Royals looking at guys bringing in.
Yeah, and I think as a fan myself, I think I would just like to see them go out and get a couple of these guys. I think there's this, there's strength in numbers, and if you bring in 4 or 5 guys for 2 spots, let that competition take over, see what you got, and that's not going to cost you a whole lot. I mean, like what else? What else do we have to lose? We've been a bad baseball team for several years now.
Right.
We've not been good about bringing in pitching talent. So why don't we just go get a couple of these guys that are prove it guys that are a little bit more prove it than what we're used to seeing, and see how many of them could pan out. Because even some of these guys we mentioned, even if they can't quite pan out as a strong starter, I think there's a couple of those guys that would still be decent bullpen additions, whether they're the long relief guy or the spot start here and there. I think the Royals need numbers this offseason. I don't think they can roll in with what we typically see. I think they need to bring 4 or 5 guys that are proven veterans that have the ability to do some of that. Well, the computer just automatically took me back to Royals free agent starting pitchers instead of my next button here. The last year we were going to talk about, I think we're going to save for another episode because now that we're a little bit further in than I was anticipating. So the next Royals episode, I think we're going to do our tier of former Royals pitchers. And there's about 5 or 6 of them there. And I actually added a couple names while we were sitting here talking that we can dive into. So maybe we'll do that in another episode. Just kind of break down some former pitchers there and maybe include a couple former relievers. But yeah, any other guys you think we're forgetting about? I really like the Jack Flaherty. I think, again, that would be a fun one. Him and Giolito. I don't feel like either of those seem that realistic. Maybe Flaherty more so than the other. But if you could go get one of these guys we've mentioned, who's top of your list?
Personally, and I know he's probably at the bottom of most people's, I would love if they brought in Bauer, man. That one would excite me the most. If you took him off the table, I'd probably say Giolito.
Yeah.
Is if you just got me the choice of the realistic-ish, you're not including the Blake Snells, those kind of guys, but like I think I would lean with Giolito.
Yeah, I like both of those. The other one I would look, well, I guess the other 2 I would look at that we didn't mention just because I don't think they're going to be strong markets. But Hyun-Jin Ryu from Toronto, he's been consistent for years, obviously getting up there, almost 37. And then Alex Wood from San Francisco and of course the Dodgers. I've also kind of always liked him. Again, getting up there, a little bit older, but still has some good stuff there. And then maybe even a guy like a Mike Clevenger, who's given the Royals hit.
Johnny Chirinos is a guy to watch out too. He pitched really well for the Rays there for a couple years, and so he already has that relationship with Carl coming off a down year. I think those are the kind of moves, man.
That was the thing I forgot to mention that about Nick Anderson. Also pitched with the Rays when Matty Cute was there, so there's a lot of familiarity. Excuse me.
So yeah, Nick Anderson is a guy that he bounced back well. He had a really good 2022 and he wasn't a super high leverage guy, but he may close some games for the Royals this year depending on what they do with this bullpen, which I would be okay with.
Yeah, again, I think it's got to be options. You don't have that one guy in the bullpen right now. And again, we'll talk about bullpen more detail in another episode. But you don't have that guy that you can just point to and say, "Yep, he's the 9th inning guy, and we're going to roll with him." You've got maybe a couple that could do that. I think you'll still see Carlos Hernandez get some opportunity for that, but you don't have that guy who's locked into that position. But let's wrap it up there. This has been, another episode of some Royals talk. Of course, more to come. Again, there hasn't been a lot of movement yet. Hopefully here in the next few weeks, we'll see some more. But yeah, next Royals episode, we'll talk about some former Royals pitchers and see if you guys have any interest in bringing them back. Of course, we'll talk about our interest in them. And then we'll do a couple more like player profile breakdowns of guys that we are curious about. And then if anything, if some news breaks, then maybe we can talk some more detail. But Chris, anything else you want to add on for this?
Nope. Always just enjoy talking. I could talk for days about meaningless baseball pitchers, you know.
So if people want to talk with you about baseball, where can they find you?
Yeah, you find me on Twitter at 10penny88. I'm always spouting off something about some random stuff. So especially baseball related. So please, if you're just in a baseball mood and just want to talk about random guys, please hit me up. We can go back and forth all day.
Maybe we'll do a Twitter Spaces one of these nights and see if anybody on the Twitter sphere has any interests in talking
Yeah.
some baseball with
We'll
us. Maybe
see.
not just Royals baseball, but some other baseball. But yeah,
General
he's
bit.
Chris Tenpenny. I'm Keegan Russell. You can find me at Keeganator_11. It is football season and basketball season, and so I'm talking a lot of Chiefs and KU specifically. Obviously, if you guys have been watching, you know we've got great content here on the KC Sports Authority podcast. You can always catch Chris doing the aftermath, talking Chiefs with CJ Jones, and sometimes you'll find myself in there too. We got still some more KU football coming with bowl games coming up soon. KU basketball is really taking off. We have a couple fun episodes planned for that coming up. So make sure if you're following us on social media, you got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. Give us a like and a follow. That way you always know when new episodes drop. And then, of course, if you're listening on Spotify, follow the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, leave us your comments, share it with a friend. And if you're watching here on YouTube, just hit that subscribe button real quick. That would help us out. We're on our way to 250. And then we've got some bigger goals after that. And you guys are doing wonders to help us. It's been a great last couple of weeks. Feedback from you guys. We're getting a lot more responses and comments on YouTube. So we'd love to see that. So don't be afraid to leave us a comment, hit us up, share any thoughts you have with us. But until next time, that'll do it for us tonight. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.